It's Roger once again, Mudfossil University with cutting edge science here today.
And scorching temperatures.
I'm going to
not exactly
let this
ideal
play,
conditions to support vegetation.
and you can listen. This is desert. This was
that
desert.
On its head is this desert in North China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region.
All right, I'm going to put this on hold 1 second. This is from CGTN America, and it's called New Technology in China Turns Desert into Land Rich with Crops. And it is amazing, and it is all mud fossil technology. I understand it because I understand the rocks, and I understand how they become bits of rocks and sedimentation and sand, and I know how they recombine to become life again. What sand is and different soils are another living thing that has become separated through the life process. And I think we can even use salt water to irrigate these crops. Now, I'll show you everything in extreme detail, but let this guy play this. By the way, how this happened was I have a friend that was going to well, I don't know if he lives in Brussels or whatever. He was going to Brussels to the embassy to see one of the ambassadors from this area in Africa that they're talking about remediating the deserts. And we were discussing, and because I also found the thing in Atlantis, and he was going to bring that up. But anyway, this is how this all started. So it's sort of everything is a circuitous route. But once I got into this, I saw exactly what they're doing. Well, let me let them play it because it's not my work. By the way, it's not my work. If I would have never ever even thought about this, really, to be honest with you, if my friend going into Brussels had not contacted me about it. Anyway, let's watch this.
According to our calculation, there are over 70 kinds of crops growing here. Many are not planted by us, but they just grow themselves.
Crops like corn, tomatoes, sorghum, and sunflowers, transforming more than 200 hectares of sand dunes into an oasis, all within 6 months. It's all thanks to new technology developed by researchers at Chongqing Jiaotong University. They developed a paste made of a substance found naturally in plant cell walls.
That is the key, plant cell walls. If you go into the chemistry, you find out exactly what they're made out of, fatty acids.
When it's added to sand, it's able to retain water, nutrients, and air.
The costs of artificial materials and machines for transforming sand into soil is lower compared with controlled environmental agriculture and reclamation.
The research team has big future plans. This fall, it hopes to transform an additional 200 hectares of desert, and possibly more than 13,000 in the next few years. The method could be promising for China. In 3 years, the country hopes to reforest 50% of degraded desert land that can be treated. By 2030, the United Nations is aiming to reach zero growth of desert farmland around the world. So China's breakthrough experiment in converting sand to soil is promising for making land seemingly hostile to life fertile ground.
All right, that is all valid, absolutely 100% valid from what I'm seeing and from what the research that I've done with mud fossils shows. Now, you still need water. It's just like any other plant, you need water. But there is also another thing I think that could conserve on that and maybe even make that almost free. Let's look into that. All right, I want to talk about this guy too. He's got a way of making sand into soil in 7 hours, and you want to see the results this guy got. This is a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous technology that needs to be explored in the mud fossil way. Now, this is from TEDx Talks, and this is a TED Talk, and this is Ole Morten Olesen. Now, I tried contacting him, and we'll see what happens, but listen to what he has to say.
A batch with liquid nanoclay, which was our
Oh,
patent.
well, let me set it up for you. His father and him, long ago, or apparently long ago, they have a patent on this particular process to create liquid nanoclay, which is particularized clay particles that just seep right into sand. This was always a problem with sand before. They could never get the stuff to drain into it, really is what it boils down to. And it's just there's some chemistry here that I understand, I'm sure, and is the chemistry of life. So let's go on to what he says. But this is mud fossil chemistry. Here he goes. And again, he created this paste that it's a liquid, and they just drive it with a truck over there, just like they're watering the soil, and it just runs down into the soil, and it infuses the sand with these nano clays, these clay, and that's all it is clay, and that's, I've been saying this for years, all you are on the skin surface is sand and clay. It's silicon and it's the fleshy clays.
The idea, and we pour it on, and the clay goes straight into the sand and binds perfectly. Now Steve looks at this, and he had a facial expression I've never seen before. He gets up, he leaves the office. There's some mechanical work on one of the walls outside. After a while he comes back again and the work has stopped. He sits down and goes, okay, let's do this. Later he confessed that he was so angry that two hillbillies from Norway had found a solution that had evaded them for so long, and at the same time he was so happy that there finally was hope, because he immediately knew what this would mean. So we tested it. As you can see, there's a slight difference. We got ridiculous results. We had an increase of 416% what they could manage to get out of their soil when we applied liquid nanoclay to the ground and then fertilized it. That was an amazing improvement, but unfortunately that was also our bane, because there was no researcher willing to sign off on this. They all thought it was a joke. They met up, they saw what we were doing. Those who paid attention all the time, they knew we hadn't cheated. And they asked, can I have it in my backyard, in my field? And we say, sure, but would you like to sign the report? And he goes, no way. And the reason was that he said, I would be laughed out of the society if I do that. I will never work as a scientist again. I can see the results, but I cannot explain it.
I just want to make a point here. This has been the problem with really good science for literally since we went into the age of enlightenment, where they could just dismiss everything because they're now academics and they have the ability to dismiss everybody else. So, and Max Planck put it perfectly, that science advances one funeral at a time. Once that guy makes up his mind, that's it until he dies and the next guy takes over. So this guy is a scientist that understands the reality of doing this true science. I just want to give him credit for where credit is due, because this is the kind of people that are just turned away from the doors everywhere.
So it took us almost 6 years to figure out why they were so angry.
6 years,
this.
same with me already.
Then Christian finally found out that there is a fungus that wouldn't grow in the sand without the liquid nanoclay. And that fungus is responsible for converting fertilizers into nutrition for plants.
All right, this is another thing that I've been saying right along, is the bacteria that's in your system does exactly the same thing as this fungus stuff. Because if you don't have the bacteria in your system to create the enzymes that are little chemistry sets that create the chemistry that goes out to harvest the metals, it either harvests them or actually makes them, I don't know. But it is responsible for these transition metals that are the things that transport everything throughout your body. This is the same sort of situation. With these nanoclays, which contain the actual body chemistry Because everything is alive. Everything is alive. So that thing needed some certain thing that is in the nanoclay body chemistry to be able to create this fungus. And we have the same things in us. We need certain bacteria in our gut to create enzymes to process the foods we create and create products that end up being delivered by the transition metals that these bacteria end up mining, literally. And the same bacteria that they use in, well, not the same bacteria necessarily, but the same sort of process they use in the waste treatment plants. They're using bacteria and so forth to harvest up the heavy metals, and that's what it is. And certain bacteria do certain groups of metals. That is the case. And those groups of metals do not do ionic bonding. They don't hook solidly to other molecules. They are handshakers. They grab a hold of something at a certain pH, and then when they get to another certain pH, they drop it off. And that's how your body works, is in different pHs in different locations in your body. That is the transfer mechanism. I understand it now, and it's transition metal based, and the transition metals are in the clays, not in the sands, because the sand is your skin. The sand is tissue. It's the outside tissue of your body. Then you go in from there into the clays, which is the flesh. All right, so here he goes.
And 80% of all plant life on Earth need that fungus to grow or to thrive. So that's by accident.
Well, I just got to jump in here again. I know I get carried away with this, but I've been saying it over and over and over and over. Chronic illness is where you don't have certain transition metals in your body, or they're at increased levels or decreased levels. They are not doing the job, or they are restricting something else from doing the job. That is what leads to chronic illness, where you get itchy and you get scratchy and you're certain different areas in your body need certain different transition metals, and that is fully understood, and I can prove that 100%, and I have, and all my videos show this. So anyway, I'll get back to this. I'm sorry.
We had found a way to make that fungus enjoy living in the desert, and that was the magic. Now all the researchers went, "Oh, that's brilliant, easy, we can do that." Anyway, so what's so game-changing about that? We can make grow a little bit in the sand. Well, if you look on all the deserts that exist and imagine them green, that's 1/3 of the planet. That is now considered fertile farmland. We had the same yield as good American farm soil in pure desert. Even better, we were using only 1 kilo of clay per square meter, and we watered it in. And on top of that, we only used 1/3 of the water. So we were saving water, we were getting ridiculous results, and we could do it all over the sandy deserts. But to put it into a perspective that you understand, the US, as we think of it, is using 16% of their land mass for farm soil. That is the US in true scale compared to the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert is bigger than the US, and that's one desert. And we can use all of that as farmland. That brings us up to an almost unlimited amount of farmland that is now possible to use. And where we have farmland, you can have civilization, you can have cities, you can have forests, you can do whatever you want.
I want to make another point too. These desert areas are not completely deserts either. They're not completely deserts. There are areas there that I can show and are easily found that contain the types of materials, the clays and so forth, the bodily materials of creatures' bodies that will will go into the soils to amend them and to bring them back to a living situation, because that's what it is. The Indians used to take a fish and throw it in a hole and put a plant on top of it. It grew like crazy. You need all of that nutrition. You need these transition metals, you need the clays, you need the sand, you need the soils, the silicon, you need the aluminum, the magnesium, every single bit of that. And that is what is in life. So what all they have in the desert is what eroded off the skin. That is your silicon, and that's your skin. And then what the rest of the stuff is the flesh. And that is not in the eroded part of what's in the desert. You put them back together, you got your soil. And then I got another way I think I can give free water, but we'll talk about that in a second.
And I'm not talking about theoretical science. I'm talking about practical, proven technology. We have planted over 10,000 trees and had several wheat fields. We have pepper fields. We have had date trees that we treated, and all of them have improved and really thrived in pure desert sand. However, water is always a problem. But that technology already exists today. The US, China, Iran, and Saudi, we're all using, and many other countries are using desalination. That means you take salt water and turn it into fresh water by a rather energy cost method. Saudi, for example, is using 25% of all the oil they're producing, and they're producing a lot, to go straight into desalination to make water for the population.
All right, here's where I think that water may be able to be used to water these crops. Now, I know there's, oh, salt water kills things. Well, let's talk about that in a minute. Let him finish up and then we'll talk about that.
It's an amazing feat. Unfortunately, it's also polluting a lot. So instead, you could take, say, a region of the desert that's nobody using anyway. We plant the forest. We can take some of that biomass and turn that into energy by intensive cropping. And since we use a very little water, we can make a lot of biomass grow. And that can be turned into energy either by bio-oil or biochip or any other emerging technology that turns biomass into energy. Now, the reason this hasn't been so popular lately is that they were taking away farmland from farmers. But now that's not a problem. We need to do this to actually grow in the desert. So this is what we started with. And the heat, when you come out, well, I was driving down with a car. I'm European, so I have air cooling in the car. And then you go out of the car and you can feel being hit by the heat. It's warm. And we had bulldozers leveling it, and it was leveled. We started planting, and I go, yeah. So we spent about 7 hours where we were using liquid nanoclay, just watering it on. We had fertilizers and we had seeds planted. And then I returned a year later. And we had wheat fields, we had trees 5 meters high.
Look at that. That's in 1 year. It's in 1 year in the desert. That's just unbelievable.
And the funny thing is, you all try this. You go on asphalt, which is warm when it's summer, it's hot, your feet are burning, and then you go on the lawn and it goes, ah. And the same feeling was there. I went into among the trees, and it was the feeling that, hey, I can have a picnic here. This would be nice. I sit in the shadows, and life isn't that bad. So, and this is something we can do all over. Wherever you have sand and salt water, we have the technology to produce water, food, and energy. That's the foundation of a society. And of course, a lot of jobs. And you can do this anywhere there is a desert. You can always transport the water. China, for example, is now building a channel from the coast all the way into Inner Mongolia. It's just a question of will. This is a little bit Photoshop picture. But what is real is actually the sand dunes.
They actually this side was planted and this wasn't. That they put a tree in here. You photoshopped it in.
On both sides are the same. We only leveled it and planted a wheat field and trees. The tree in the background is also. But the point is that we can, by today's technology, change the future. I believe we're standing on the brink of a new age, an age of bio, where we'll have unlimited amount of food, water, and power. And on a local level, we will produce a lot of work. On a global level, we will be reducing the CO2, because this is a carbon negative process. You use some of those plants for energy, for food, and whatever, and then you plant some more. And thus we can expand. Instead of saving, we can now expand, build more, and fix the environment at the same time, and we'll have a lot of jobs and a lot of energy. I believe this is the age that is coming, is the age of bio.
He is right, and I give him a lot of credit. Him and his father apparently developed this method of, they understood what they needed to do to remediate the soil. And God bless him. I think this is a viable thing. It really, it's exciting me now that I'm seeing what I'm seeing. All right, we're going to get back into this, and it's going to get kind of geeky. But for now, what you want to take away is the plastic clay and the kaolin clay. That's your fleshy clays. And look what you got. You got less than 50% silicon, SiO2. And then you've got aluminum and iron and potassium and sodium and calcium and magnesium and all these different things that are in your flesh. That's what it is. It's flesh. And this is the thin skin, which, look at aluminum, a lot of aluminum oxides, and a little bit of ferrous and so forth. Still got some of this stuff. That is close to your surface layer. Then you get down in a calcium feldspar, has a lot of calcium in it. Not calcium, I'm sorry, potassium. Potassium feldspar. And it's got some sodium in it and so forth. Now you get down into the stuff that is the sand, which is the eroded skin cells that are the fibrous cells. It's 99.66% silicon. It has none of the stuff that comes from your fleshy tissues. So literally all they're doing is putting that stuff back with that stuff. Now, we'll get into this a little deeper, because I think you can get free water and free fertilizer, maybe. All right, this is about potash and potassium. It used to be leached from wood ashes, and it was called potash. But you know, they did it in these iron pots. That's why they call it potash. Then they decided, no, a better way to do it would be to get it out of the salts. Look, over 350 million years ago, the huge Devonian Sea was slowly drying up in the area of central Canada, northern U.S., leaving behind concentrated salts and minerals. That's underneath the Great Lakes. There's tons of salt. This process continues today in places such as Great Salt Lake and the Dead Sea. And now, this ancient marine salts are now recovered and used in a variety of ways, with the majority being used as potassium fertilizer. These are salts from the Dead Sea. This is salts right out of the oceans and so forth. Now, why can't they use the potassium from the salts that comes out of the ocean and the water that's left over to water the crops? I don't know. To make some kind of sense to me, maybe they would have to put them in big drying ponds or something. Just pump it all up into there and let it leach out through layers of sand or something. And then you actually would get water that would be usable. It might have some salt in it. I don't know. Because the salts are evaporated out of all of this mix already, because they're putting salts back in. These potassium things are salts. So I don't know what else to say. It's a potassium essential for plant health, and there must be an adequate supply in the soil to maintain good health. When the potassium supply is limited, plants have reduced yields, poor quality, and so forth. Now, I may be totally wrong about this, but it's something that should be thought about. They're looking for water. Well, There's water in seawater. There's salts in seawater. There's potassium in seawater. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. But, you know, somebody with a little bit of engineering background and some osmosis or something, I don't know. But it looks like it should work to me. Now, all that, and this looks very, very, very tremendous potential to me. I could be totally wrong, but I think they're going to come up with something here, and I like the looks of it. All right, so we know that plants, by the way, this is by Mosaic Crop Nutrition. It's called cropnutrition.com. It's about potash, which is the potassium, and it's all of its little derivatives that go along with it. You see, like potassium chloride, potassium sulfate, magnesium, Now, this is what has been leached out of the productive soils and has to be added back into them. And where did it leach to? It leached into the salt waters. That's where it went. Now, I can't see why this is such a big thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. But I'm thinking, here we go. We got potash coming out of the ocean waters. There's going to be leftover water as far as I can determine. It's all part of the same package. And somehow it could be evaporated off, or however it happens. I'm sure there's some way of chemically interacting to get the potash part that you want and the sulfates and so forth in their correct places, and there's going to have to be water left over. So it's going to be better than trying to take everything out of it in the process they're using now, I would assume, but again, I don't know this for a fact. These are things I'm just throwing out there. So we've got more to go on this. Let's go a little further. Okay, this may possibly be helpful in the remediation of the soil as well, because this is castor oil plants, and they create beans, and the beans have what they call fatty acids in them, which is also known as an ester. Now, this ester and this fatty acid is extremely effective at rehydrating stones. And stones are literally the sand and all of the rest of the stuff. Sand is only a little stone, but it's primarily a silicon, versus other stones might have different types of minerals in them that are not silicon. Okay, but the sand, the castor oil is absolutely phenomenal at invading stone. And it rehydrates, and it stays that way for quite some time. And it creates a surface coating that may protect it as well. I don't know. But anyway, it's something that should be looked at, because castor oil grows quite well in a lot of different conditions in this particular area in the world that we would want it to grow. And it is extreme. It's been used throughout history for everything, just about. And it works extremely well at fixing your aches and pains of spiky little pains and tendons and things. Now, how it does it, I'm not exactly certain, but I think it stimulates the blood chemistry to work better, because you can put it in your eyes and it will correct the redness in your eyes and things like that. Cleopatra did that. Cleopatra used it in her eyes. You put it right in your eyes, you put it in your ears, you use it, and I take it too internally. Not a whole lot here. I take a half a teaspoon every now and then, but it's there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's fabulous, actually, to be honest with you. So that is what I would recommend would be planted around the edges and so forth. It would work in the and they did some salt studies on this. Here's right here. Now this is and what I'm getting at is there's going to be salt water. Let's say we're going to use the salt water. Somehow we're going to have to extract the potassium to get the fertilizers out of it. And there's other things in there, salts and this and that your plants need. They need all that stuff. So all that stuff can be extracted and somehow processed into a plant food. They're doing it now. Now, you're still probably going to have some salinity in the water. It's going to be excessive. I don't know. But castor beans should be planted and be infused into the soils, because they're going to add fatty acids. Acids allow chemistry to move. They break down, they add extra electrons to things, and they cause different chemistry to happen. Now, this is by Silo, and it's from SCIELO.BR on internet. Now, this is about castor bean production, chemical attributes of soil irrigation with water of different cationic compositions, which means salt. Now, study aimed to evaluate the production of castor beans in terms of soil chemical composition as a function of the cationic nature and salinity levels of the irrigation water. Now, the experiment was carried out using, well, you don't want to know all about this stuff, but if somebody does, it's right here. Now, the treatments consist of 6 types of salinity, S1, S2, S3, all the different types of molecules that were in the water that were salty molecules. And then they found out what happened to it. And I'm not going to go into it now. We're most sensitive variability, salinity, and da. So if you want to look into this, but there is work that was done to see how plants grow in different salinity. We're going to have water being used that's going to be salt water, and we're going to try to extract something. We're going to end up with something probably that's going to have some salinity in it. If it was able to grow plants that were on the periphery, it's a win-win-win-win-win. And plus, if you can create these castor beans, which are the acids, the fatty acids, and have the properties necessary to remediate this soil and bring it back to a living condition, then, I mean, how can you miss with that? You got employment for people working out there. You got things that grow there for food and for production and for economic value. You know, firewood and building materials and medical products grown out there. It seemed like they were growing pretty good. And when you're in these different soils in Africa, they are extremely red, which means they are deep with blood. It just has to be made free to move with these fatty acids and breaking down those blood molecules, because you have to get into a couple of lower pH levels to crack open these molecules to use them. That's what the key, because they are what they call chelated. It starts with CH. I say chelated. They're chelated. They're surrounded by ligands which encapsulate them in there, and they cannot get out until you crack the bond. And you can't crack the bond until you get to a certain pH level that disassociates those ligands. And that is how it works in your body. That's the handshake between transition metals. So it's not something that's a big mystery. It's just not understood. That's my way of thinking. Maybe I'm wrong. But there's a lot here that could happen, in my mind. All right, so Mudfossil University, once again, the citadel of truth, and trying to put out some information that hopefully will make some difference in someone's life somewhere. All right, thank you much. Roger, over and out. Alright, this I said I would get a little geeky. I almost forgot, so I'm not signing off yet, but here we go. Sandstone is eroded skin. Mudstone is the flesh that's below the eroded sandstone, and limestone is the connective tissues and bones and so forth. If you look at the chemistry here, Si silicon is the red. Silicon is in the skin, sandstone. You see it? It's dense here. There's hardly any here and not a whole lot there. There's a little bit in the tendinous area. Now, then you go into the other ferrous and the aluminum and calcium and magnesium and all that stuff, and you see that they run through the body, because that's the nature of the way the chemistry of the body works. You have to have these things available to do business. Then you go out to the next thing, which is calcium. Well, sandstone doesn't have much calcium. It's in the bones and connective tissues, and so forth. Anyway, the bones and connective tissues. So that's the chemistry. A little bit geeky. It's not a big thing to understand. Eroded skin, silicon, mudstone, flesh, limestone, tendon. And there's your other one here. Your clay. Down here, clay is mud and mudstone. Like Harvard and Max Planck says, oh yeah, there's DNA in mud. Well, mud is mudstone. It's just eroded from the mudstone. All right, so your clay is down here, and of course sand is even down below that. Then you go up towards your lime and limestone, which is your connective tissue. That's the way it works. They mix inside you, so you have your sand way down here, then you get into your mud, your flesh, and your blood, and then it starts to get a little bit fibrous and this and that inside where your organs and so forth are, and then it gets more and more into your bones and connective tissue, and then the hardest stuff, calcium, CaCO3, that's your bones. It's your bones, your connective tissue, CaCO3. This is clay, which is all of the other organic stuff, which I showed before. All right, chemical composition of studied raw materials. Plastic clays are the mud and the clay. It's plastic clay, and that includes all of the things that are in your flesh. You see all these different chemicals. Kaolin clays are your really fine skin. They make fine china out of it. It's so fine, and it contains all of these things too that are in your fleshy areas. Then your potassium feldspar has it has the potassium in it. Now that seems to be an area between these two areas. Then you get into your quartz area where it's the sand. It's almost 100% silicon dioxide, has none of the stuff here. So like I said before, we mix the two together. Alright, this is why I can say that the body is so completely specific about tissues. All these different colors are transition metals, and those transition metals are required to be in this specific tissue here, in that color, or that will be chronically ill. Your blood is red. This apparently is some kind of ventricle walls. These are like the chambers of your aorta and so forth, the blood entryways or whatever. I'm not sure of what these are exactly, but this is a heart. And you can see how specific the colors are. All right, these are transition metal colors. These are the different colors. And you see this 3+, 2+, and so forth. That's the charge, that what they call oxides. It's an oxidation level that these things can be at. And here's what it says here. The transition metals form colored compounds and complexes. They call them transition metal complexes. These colors can vary depending upon the charge on the metal ion, and the number and type of groups of atoms called ligands that surround the metal core. And these are in aqueous solutions. The ions form complexes with the color shown over here. And then it talks about electrons are arranged around the nucleus of the metal atom in orbitals. And these are handshake molecules, and I think I discussed that before. And I have all the details on this. I keep going over and over and over, and I'm sure people are getting sick of talking about transition metals, but that is the key to all this. And they consider these trace elements. Just, and I saw one thing about gold the other day. Yeah, there's some rattling around in your cells, Well, they're not rattling around. All of these are transition metal ions. You have uranium, in your body. You have uranium in your body. That's a transition metal. You have iridium in your body. Right now, as we speak, it's iridizing all around your body, and you're uranizing too. That is what's in your body, is these transition metals. There's 100 of them, and they make you well. And what creates those transition metals, or assists in those harvesting of them, is bacteria, and the process is the bacteria works to create enzymes, and enzymes are nothing more than a little chemistry set that says go out and break down whatever you find that has copper in it and bring the copper back. That's what happens. The bacteria creates the enzymes go out and break down the things, then they somehow become harvested to do their job in the blood of moving things around by adding charges or removing charges. And that happens in a different pH in your body. Up here you're 7.4, let's say. Down here you're 7.2. I'm just throwing out numbers. they're in that range. And that is the drop-off and pickup point. These transition metals do not bond securely, they handshake. All right, that's about the last time I've ever going to say this. I've said it 1,000 times. That's just what it is. All right, so I guess that's it. Roger, over and out.